78%. That is not a guess. That is roughly how many Americans reach the end of their life. Without six figures in real investable money, not millions, not even $100,000 in the bank. Meet John. John is 41, a project manager earning $94,000 a year. By every visible measure, John is doing fine. Nice house, 2 cars, a 401k he never opens. But John is quietly on track to die with less than $100,000 to his name. And here is the part that should bother you. It has almost nothing to do with how much John earns. Most people think dying broke is an income problem. It is not. It is a timing problem, and the math is brutal. The clock decides almost everything. A study from MIT economist James Poterba found something genuinely staggering about the end of life. 46% of Americans had less than $10,000 in financial assets in their final year. Not 100,000, 10,000. Today we run the numbers on why this keeps happening. Let me show you how close to the edge most people in America really live every single month. The median 401k balance in America is $38,000. The median, not the average. The average gets dragged up by a handful of very large accounts at the top. For Americans aged 55 to 64, the median 401k is just $87,000. That is the savings of people who are only 5 short years from the finish line. Meanwhile, surveys say Americans believe they need $1.46 million to retire comfortably. Sit with that gap for a second. $87,000 on one side, $1.46 million on the other. The National Council on Aging found 80% of older households are financially struggling or at risk. That is 47 million households. This is not a story about lazy people or reckless people. It is a story about a system where the default outcome is quietly running out of money. Before you assume this could never be you, hear the math out. The broke rarely saw it coming. Let me introduce you to 2 people because the contrast between them is the whole lesson today. Meet Diana. Diana is a marketing director who climbed steadily up the corporate ladder. Over her career, she earns more than John ever did, topping out at $130,000 a year. Diana is responsible. She pays her bills on time. She never carries crazy credit card debt. By any reasonable definition, Diana did absolutely everything right with her everyday money. Now meet John again. John earns less than Diana every single year of his working life. John is not smarter than Diana. John is not more disciplined than Diana is either. John drives an older car and takes fewer vacations than Diana ever does in a year. If you line these two up at age 30, you would bet on Diana every single time. She earns more, she looks more successful, she has the better title and the nicer apartment. And yet, at age 65, Diana has only $94,000 saved. John, who earned less every year, somehow has $1.2 million saved. Same country, same decades, a staggering $1,200,000 gap between these two people. Let me keep this fair, because the real difference here is not what you think it is. Diana was not careless at all. Diana was simply 10 years late to the game. And 10 years when it comes to money is not a small thing at all. 10 years is the whole game. Let me show you how a head start becomes a $1 million gap. Here is what nobody tells you about compounding. The growth that matters most happens at the very end. John started investing just $200 a month at the early age of 25. Diana started investing $400 a month at the later age of 35. Diana invested twice as much money every single month for her entire working career. But John started a full 10 years earlier, and that one head start changed absolutely everything. By 65, at a 7% return, John contributed about $96,000 of his own dollars. That $96,000 quietly grew to roughly $525,000. Diana, meanwhile, contributed about $144,000 of her own money. That is more cash in, by a full $50,000 more than John ever put in. But Diana's money had 10 fewer years to actually grow and compound for her. Her final balance lands near just $340,000 at retirement. She put in more money, and yet somehow she ended up with far less. Read that again slowly. She put in more, and she ended up with less. That is not bad luck at all. That is simply the cold arithmetic of compound interest. The first dollar you invest is worth more than the last because it has the most time. Here is what actually happens to the money that should have quietly been saved each month. It does not vanish into a bad investment. It leaks out through ordinary monthly decisions. Diana upgraded her car every 4 years. A nicer lease, $300 more per month. Over 30 years, that single choice cost her $108,000 in payments. Invested instead, that very same money would have grown past $300,000. The car was never the real expense. The growth she gave up was the true expense. This is the exact trap that almost everyone in America walks straight into. We measure our purchases only by their sticker price, never by their true hidden cost. We never measure them by what that money quietly would have become instead. A slick salesman told Diana that she absolutely deserved the shiny new upgrade. He was not lying about the car at all. He was lying about the real cost. The real cost of anything is whatever it could have grown into over time. Now look closely at where the median American family actually keeps most of its wealth. For most American households, net worth is not cash or stocks. It is home equity. The median net worth for households aged 65 to 74 is around $410,000. But strip out the house, and the actual liquid financial assets shrink dramatically. You simply cannot buy your weekly groceries with a kitchen that you are still living in. This is exactly why so many people look comfortable and still quietly die broke. They are asset-rich on paper, and yet they are cash-poor in reality. Their wealth is locked deep inside a building that they stubbornly refuse to ever sell. And when a medical bill or a roof repair arrives, there is nothing liquid to absorb it. The house is simply not a retirement plan. The house is just a place to live. Here is what almost nobody ever tells you about ordinary, boring-looking investment fees. A number that looks tiny can quietly eat a full quarter of your retirement. Imagine two identical investors both earning a steady 7% before any costs. One pays a 1% annual fee, the other one pays absolutely nothing at all. Over 40 long years, that tiny 1% does not cost you just 1%. It quietly costs you roughly a full quarter of your entire final balance. On a $1 million portfolio, that is hundreds of thousands of dollars, simply gone forever. Gone to a quiet fee that you never even felt leave your own account. Diana's old workplace plan charged her 1.2% and she never once noticed. John chose simple, low-cost index funds that charged him almost nothing at all. Same market, same returns, but one of them quietly handed a fortune to the fund company. Fees never feel like a real cost. That is exactly why they are so dangerous. Here is the one piece that almost every single video on this topic misses entirely. Social Security is the single largest asset most Americans will ever truly own, and yet it never shows up anywhere on a personal balance sheet at all. For a median earner, the lifetime value of Social Security can exceed $500,000. But here is the real catch. The age you claim it changes that value enormously. Claim it at 62 and you lock in a permanently smaller monthly check forever. Wait until age 70 and your monthly benefit can be a full 76% higher. For a higher earner, delaying can mean an extra $200,000 over retirement. Diana claimed at 62 because she had no cushion and desperately needed the income. John waited until age 70 because his own investments comfortably carried him through. The person with savings could afford to wait, and that waiting made him even richer. The system quietly rewards exactly the people who least need the extra help. Here is what almost nobody tells you about actually running out of money in retirement. The danger is not just how much you have. It is precisely when the market falls. Financial planners have a name for this. They call it sequence of returns risk. Picture the market dropping 30% in your very first 2 years of retirement. While you are pulling money out just to live, your portfolio may simply never recover. The same average return, in a different order, can mean $2 million or nothing at all. John had a buffer of cash and Social Security, so he never sold stocks in a crash. Diana had no buffer, so she sold her investments at the worst possible time, locking losses. Two ordinary people, the very same market, and yet two completely opposite outcomes. The simple order of the returns quietly decided which of them actually survived. This is the hidden risk that turns a comfortable retirement into a broke one. Here is a brutal number that almost no one ever actually plans for ahead of time. The average 65-year-old couple retiring today will spend over $300,000 on healthcare. And that enormous sum is on top of Medicare, not instead of it. For someone with $87,000 saved, one serious illness does not dent the plan. It does not dent the plan. That single illness simply is the plan, fully erased. John kept a dedicated health buffer and a health savings account invested for decades. Diana simply assumed that Medicare alone would somehow cover all of it. It did not. One single hospital stay turned her thin financial cushion into absolutely nothing. The cruelest part of dying broke is how often one medical event is the final push. Most people honestly believe the simple answer is just to earn more. It is not. Higher income all by itself almost never actually fixes this underlying problem. Studies of lottery winners and high earners show the very same pattern again and again. When your income rises, your spending almost always quietly rises right up to match it. Economists have a name for this. They call it lifestyle creep, and it is relentless. Diana's steady raises over all those years simply did not ever become real savings. They instead became a bigger apartment, nicer dinners out, and a flashy second car. Every single time her paycheck grew, her spending baseline quietly grew right with it. So the gap between what she made and what she actually kept simply never closed. John's income barely moved at all for a whole decade, but his savings rate sure did. He automated his investing first, and then he simply lived on whatever was left over. That one habit, paying himself before everyone else, beat any raise Diana ever got. You do not get rich from what you earn. You get rich from what you refuse to spend. Here is what actually happens to most inheritances, because this is where the broke cycle repeats. The median inheritance in America is far smaller than most people ever imagine. And most of that money is somehow completely gone within just a few short years. When money arrives without the habits that built it, it tends to leave the very same way. A windfall lands in a checking account, the car gets upgraded, the vacation gets booked. And within just 2 short years, the balance is right back where it first started. This is exactly why dying broke is never just a single personal story. It is a stubborn pattern that quietly hands itself down through the generations. The parents who never once learned the real math rarely ever teach it to anyone. And so the children quietly inherit the spending habits, but not the saving ones. Breaking that whole cycle takes exactly one single generation deciding to run the numbers. Let me show you the one number that should change how you see every single purchase. It is famously called the Rule of 72, and it is beautifully simple to use. Divide 72 by your return, and you get the years your money takes to double. At a steady 7%, your money quietly doubles roughly every 10 years. So $1 invested at 25 becomes $2 whole by the age of 35. Then $4 at 45, $8 at 55, and $16 at 65. That same dollar invested at 35 instead only gets 4 doublings, not 5. It quietly ends at just $8 instead of a full $16. One single missed decade cleanly cuts your entire final result in half. This is exactly why your 20s and 30s matter so much more than your 50s. And it is genuinely not because you actually have any more money back then. It is because you have more time, the one ingredient you can never buy back. Now let us run the real numbers on starting late, because it is truly not hopeless. Say that you are 45 years old with almost nothing at all saved yet. You have not lost the whole game. You have simply changed which strategy now works. At 45, your available time is shorter, so the main lever is no longer time itself. Instead, your single biggest lever now becomes your raw monthly savings rate. Investing $1,000 a month from 45 to 65 grows surprisingly large. At 7%, that quietly grows to roughly $520,000. That is a very real retirement, fully built in just 20 focused years of saving. It demands far more cash than starting early would have, but it absolutely still works. The worst thing any late starter can ever do is decide it is too late and just stop. The simple math still quietly bends in your favor, even when you start now. It just asks for a bigger contribution instead of a much longer runway of time. Here is the genuinely counterintuitive truth sitting at the very center of all of this. The people who die broke are usually not at all the people who earned the very least. They are instead the people who started the compounding clock the very latest of all. Diana out-earned John for 40 long years and still finished with only a fraction. The real dividing line here was never once the actual size of the paycheck. It was simply the number of years that paycheck actually had to grow. That is the whole entire secret, and almost no one ever truly talks about it. Because it is not flattering, and it simply does not sell anyone anything at all. Wealth is not about how much you make. It is about how early you let it compound. Your single most valuable financial asset is honestly not your salary at all. It is the time you have left, and most people spend it like it is totally free. So if you are watching this right now at just 25, understand what you truly hold. You have the one single thing that Diana would gladly trade absolutely everything for. You have time, the only ingredient that cannot be bought, borrowed, or ever earned back. Start with just $200 a month, then automate it so you never see it. And then let the boring, patient math quietly do all the work for a full 40 years. And if you are 45 with nothing saved, your move is different, but just as real. Raise your savings rate, protect the first few retirement years, and refuse to ever quit. Next time someone says you need a 6-figure salary to retire rich, ask one question. Ask them this: how many years does the money actually have to grow before you need it? That answer, not the salary, decides whether you die with 100,000 or 1 million. Run the numbers. Make the decision that matches your reality, not someone else's sales pitch.